You're listening to Quick Wins for ADHD Moms. Hey, I'm Jessica Lynn Lewis. I am so glad you're here, and I hope you're getting a lot of great information from this podcast. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear maybe something that is challenging for you or something that you're struggling with as a mom with ADHD, trying to handle kids with ADHD. I've got a long list, and I'm trying to work through all of that to give you more information with all of these different shows. But I welcome your feedback. I'd love to hear from you. Jessica at theadhdmom.com. That's my direct email. Today we have actually another episode with Dr. Katrina Ostmeyer. Last week we talked about sensory overload, and today we dive more into school advocacy. Where do you go when you think your child is really struggling at school? You don't know who to call or who to ask for help. So we dive into that today. Great conversation. And I love talking with Katrina because she's not only a doctor, she knows her stuff. She's a mom. And so she has to do all of this herself too. So it's lived experience. Really great conversation with Katrina today. Here's the interview. Well, hey, Katrina, thank you so much for being on the show again. We had such a wonderful time last time talking about sensory overload. And this time, so excited to have you back on the show again today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So what is today's quick win?
So the quick win for today is I'm going to talk about my other child, my 14-year-old son. We got through his AP test yesterday, and it was wonderful because last night we were working on his homework and we provide some support just to help keep him on task in the afternoon when those meds have worn off. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know what? I think we just need to celebrate because I'm done with this test and I am not worried about it anymore.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's a huge win. So what kind of things did you use for him? You know, when the medicines I deal with the same thing. Medicine's wearing off, the attention starts going all over, the hyperactivity, impulsivity. What kind of things do you put in place for him?
Yeah, so it ebbs and flows a little bit here at the end of the school year. I will be honest, he had some choices where he may have avoided some work. So we are providing a little bit more support than we have in the past. A lot of things like environmental modifications. We do have a booster that he takes in the afternoon, which is his choice to just help with some of that focus. But then at home, we have a rule, no headphones. Even if you're listening to YouTubes for your classes, mom and dad can learn along with you. And we also do a few check-ins. So at one point it was every 15 minutes we were checking on him when he had a lot of homework, when his mind would wander. Now it's more, you're going to work on a TV tray. Mom's got work to do. I can look over your shoulder, just making sure you're staying on task because it's hard for the best of us. And then we take the phone. I'll be honest, that phone is probably the thing that is most distracting for him. So we do that as well. So hopeful that we can reduce some of that. Again, next year, he didn't need all of those accommodations at the beginning of the school year, but sometimes you got to be flexible.
Yeah. And it's the end of the school year. We are all literally in survival mode at this point, just ready to know that the kids are going to be influxing into the home again, and we're going to have to change our schedules. And we're like, let's just get through the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking about school, I'd love to talk to you more about school advocacy and the different things that you put in place. You mentioned like a 501. I always want to say a 501c3. That's just that is a nonprofit organization that has nothing to do with ADHD. But tell me how that works. And we have families who, our kids are in private school. We have a lot of homeschool families. How do you support your child when you definitely don't have necessarily like a structured plan? Like how do you do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, even in the public schools, it can look really different based from state to state and even district to district.
Yep. And teacher to teacher and what they understand. And so dive into that and tell me about it.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about this from those different settings. So from the public school setting into private and then homeschool settings as well. So looking at the public school setting, there's a few different tools that we can look at for helping support kids with ADHD. These can, again, vary by state. And so, for example, here in Kansas, where I live, there are two different kinds of plans that we can use to help support children with ADHD. One is an IEP, or an individualized education plan. When ADHD is the primary concern that's affecting learning, it falls under an exceptionality usually called OHI, or other health impairment. And so an IEP is a great tool for kids that maybe are really struggling to access the curriculum and learn in the classroom. And so that means that they actually need a different curriculum than other children in their class.
Now, would that be because of, if they're visual learners or if they have an auditory processing difficulty? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
is that why
yeah, it
they
could
could be
be.
having trouble?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things. There could be, ADHD likes to have friends. And so if you have ADHD, you're more likely to have other neurodevelopmental profiles such as autism, learning disorders, more biological kind of anxiety, OCD disorders.
Mhm.
And so sometimes when we've got all of those things going on, they can compound learning difficulties.
Mhm.
And where we tend to see for ADHD, the thing that's most affected is something called executive functioning.
Mhm.
And executive functioning are all of those skills that are associated with, honestly, almost everything we do, but planning, organization, attention, processing information, putting information back out, conceptualizing things. And so emotion regulation even. And so we tend to see kids who need IEPs for ADHD. A lot of the difficulties are with that executive function. And that may be, hey, maybe I can only take in so much information and use it at once. So I need things
Mm.
broken down for me, or I maybe need a different pace of instruction in some
Yeah.
cases. Um, but we also can see like maybe it's I have emotion regulation difficulties and I just get so overwhelmed in the classroom for a variety of reasons. Maybe I'm having behavioral outbursts that is the learning for myself and others. And so an IEP may focus on having additional curricula to help learn the emotion regulation along with
Okay.
accommodations to help maintain that regulation when they're learning those skills.
Okay, that makes sense. So the individualized education plan,
Yes,
the
individualized
IEP.
education plan. Yeah, IEP,
Okay.
and it is by definition individualized. So it's going to be based on what that child needs for their curriculum.
And that's something you can go to the school for and have someone i- put that together, but maybe not necessarily from the school, maybe from like the psychiatrist or who
Yeah,
who puts together the IEP.
there's a couple of different ways that families can access that. It is determined as a team, and the team
Okay.
involves the child, guardians, and then also individuals from the school district to determine, first of all, does the child meet the criteria for an exceptionality? So each state, their criteria may be a little bit different, but there are like, here's the criteria you need to meet to be given this exceptionality and qualify for IEP services. Um, if you do meet the exceptionality, then they'll actually work together to collect data and determine what that curriculum needs to look like in that education plan. If a child does not, or the team decides the child does not meet for that exceptionality, parents do have some recourse. They could actually say, you know what, I'm part of the team and I don't agree. I think my child
Hmm.
does need an IEP. And in that case, a lot of families will work with people who are called school advocates. And these are people who understand how that school system works within that state or district. And they come in and help the family advocate for what they need and why. And sometimes that might involve saying, you know what, I appreciate that you guys collected this data in the school district. And this is something that I do quite a bit, which are called independent educational evaluations. But they could say, I actually want a second opinion. So I want to go see
Okay.
somebody outside of the district. And that usually is psychologists, speech therapists, occupational
Hmm.
therapists, but people who tend to work more in private practice or hospital settings may
Okay.
do some testing and give whether they believe this child might need for an exceptionality and what supports they would need.
Yeah. Okay. So they can get more data.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And are they meeting benchmarks? So, for example, when we do, we call them IEEs for short. When I do an IEE, the things I'm often looking at are, how does their brain work with a cognitive evaluation? I'm going to look at
Yeah.
executive function, both direct and reported by others and themselves, looking at memory and learning tasks. And then the other one is what we call achievement. And that is just a testing, like, are you meeting the, what the nation says, like, you should be in the
Yeah.
areas of math, reading, and writing.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. So I just, there's a lot of resources out there. I just think there's this disconnect with how people can access that, or what do they do to go through, cuz if a parent has ADHD and they also have executive functioning difficulties, making that
Mhm.
call and
Mhm.
setting up an appointment, like that's
That can be
so
hard.
hard, right?
Yes. Well, and the first point of contact is just calling your local school district first, because a parent can say, I think my child has an exceptionality and they need to be tested. Now, the interesting thing is you can actually qualify for IEP services if your child meets for that exceptionality and not even be attending the public school system. So we see kids who have IEPs who go to private school, and sometimes they're bused to the public school for some additional services, or those
Okay.
service providers come to them and their school setting. Same thing with homeschool. Um, Parents can sometimes get those additional services to help augment what they're doing at home as well. But the first point of contact is always contacting your local
Yeah.
school district, saying, I think my child has an exceptionality. I'd like an evaluation. And so that starts that
Gets
process
the
of
ball rolling. Yeah.
determining. Then from there, if, you know, the team has agreement or disagreement, that's where you start. It's good to call in additional folks sometimes. So those educational advocates. I have a few that I like to work with here in Kansas.
Yeah.
Less familiar with, other parts of the nation, but if you even just Google educational advocate and enter your school district or your town, city, that can come up with a list
Oh,
of resources.
that's really helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And then there are also lawyers that specialize in this as well. So if you're not getting where you want with the advocate and you really see your child needs more, you can work with a lawyer as well who can help you navigate that system.
So there's the IEP, and then there's also a 504 plan. So can you explain that and how that's a little bit different than the IEP?
Yeah, so an IEP indicates that a child needs both modification to the curriculum and potentially accommodation, so something that helps them access the curriculum. A 504 plan indicates that the child can, if they can access the curriculum, they can learn. So we look at accommodations only with a 504 plan. So there's not going to be a change in the curriculum or how we teach information, or, adding in executive function coaching, for example. And so the 504 actually, for in most cases, is a little bit easier to qualify for.
Okay.
It is helpful to have a documented diagnosis, such as ADHD or
Hmm.
other things. Like my kids have ADHD and anxiety, and that's listed on their 504 plans.
Hmm.
And then those plans, you usually start with, school counselor. But honestly, if you just reach out to the school district and say, hey, my kid has ADHD. We're really struggling at school. Like, he's coming home. He's really upset about things.
Yeah.
I would like to talk about a 504. That usually starts with the counselor. They'll collect some data from their teachers and other support staff. And then you work with the school to help build that. Now, it also is really helpful to have input from other service providers you might be seeing. So if your child sees a therapist, whether that
Hmm.
be a psychologist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, who's helping work on skills that are likely related to ADHD, if you're
Right.
seeing one of these individuals, they can actually provide recommendations for things that you can do at school to help your child access that curriculum. And also, the school will collect their data too and say, here's what we think would be helpful as well.
Yeah. So you've been in the space for a long time and you have your own kids. So you're a mom, but you're also on the clinical side of things as well. And so you've got a really interesting picture about how all of this is working. And so in your particular opinion, I'm curious where you see things fall through the cracks and how you think, like in your perfect world, how could this work better?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I see it like from the private practice. Our practice also contracts with school districts to provide behavioral support as
Hmm.
well. So we've been on that other side of the IEP team with the school district. I will say where things tend to fall through the cracks. One is a lack of information for parents. And like you said, it's like knowing where to start, right?
Yeah.
And, when we do diagnostic assessments here and then also at the training clinic where I teach, one of our first recommendations is usually this child may benefit from an IEP or 504 plan. Reach out to your local school district. And then a lot of times we'll say, here's the person to reach out if we know that school district as
Yeah.
well to make it easier. Because, like you said, parents don't even know where to start.
Hmm.
And then knowing what thing to advocate for. So I've seen examples where families are advocating for IEPs. And I, as a professional, might say, like, actually, I think they need a 504. I don't think that they need a modification to the curriculum. Other times I see kids coming in with 504s and I'm like, ooh, I just tested your learning and you are not learning in this area very well. Like you're falling behind. So I think you might need a modification to your curriculum to help you access the learning. And so it's knowing which of these two advocate for can be a challenge for parents.
Yeah.
Lastly, I think it's really intimidating for a parent. Even me, like I do this. I've been in like the clinical space, the educational space, and the parent space. But even coming in for my own kids' 504 plans, I feel anxious for those
Yeah.
meetings because I don't know exactly what to expect. I don't know what they're thinking. I know we've had varieties of teachers over the years and some that have provided some really great off the record accommodation
Hmm.
that maybe lifted
Yeah.
my
He'll
my,
go
my
above and
kid.
beyond. Yeah.
Mhm. And so coming in as a parent, it's like, are you going to see the needs that I see and agree with me? Are you going to, what are you thinking? And I'm a little bit more informed, but even then, I have to kind of say, what do I need to push on and what do I need to pull back on? Because I want to be
Yeah.
collaborative. And I see that's
Right.
another place where things don't work out is if people are coming in and blaming.
Yeah.
This is the thing that really gets in the way the most in my experience. It's teachers saying like, "Hey, they're coming to school dysregulated. It's there's
It's a
problems
thing.
at home they need to fix,
Right. You need
right?
to fix your home. Yeah.
Yeah, fix your home." Or parents saying like, "You just don't understand my kid, and you need to do X, Y, and Z." And so one of the things that I really advocate for is looking at whole person within multiple environments. So that individual,
Mm.
yes, they may carry things across environments, but the best predictor of behavior is what's happening in the immediate context of that behavior. So if my child is having issues at school, it doesn't mean that there's nothing going on at home, but it also indicates that something needs to happen at school, whether that be an intervention or an accommodation.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing is we want to really focus on what's best for the child and not who's responsible for making it work,
Right.
right?
Because we're all responsible, right? We're all responsible for helping this child learn and grow. And
Mhm.
we need to take personal responsibility. But
Yeah.
it is frustrating when you don't feel that support or even empathy. If someone just had a little bit of empathy and say, I understand where you're coming from. I honestly don't know how to help you. Okay, that's a starting point.
That's a beautiful thing, right? And I, as a parent, I had an experience with my daughter in kindergarten where the word disrespectful was used. And my
Mm.
child does have a history of kind of like avoidance of guilt and shame. So when she would get corrections, she would run away from that in the best way she
Mhm.
knew in kindergarten, which was to cover her ears and hide under her desk, which is not good. And we were working on it at home because we were experiencing the same behavior at home and we'd been working on it for over a year and it was getting better. And the reality is some of our interventions just take time. They don't work
Yeah.
the first time we do them. And we found that letting her calm down and then dealing with it and practicing facing those guilt and shame inducing situations was really helpful. And for me, in that moment where the labeling of the behavior as disrespect and how I took that
Hmm.
is that was a judgment on my parenting and saying like you need to teach your child respect.
Hmm.
And you know, I
Those are those are hard. I've felt that a lot,
uh-huh.
right? And I overthink everything, right? So what did they mean by that? And am I a bad parent? And maybe it is my fault. And like all of those voices start going in your head and you're like, whoa, hold on. We just need to figure out what is the
Mhm.
behavior that's going on and how we're going to fix it, not like getting it all in our head and overreact. And
Mhm. And ironically, we had that behavior in different forms up through second grade. And then we
yeah,
had a teacher who just got it and understood it. And I saw her with my daughter, the first parent teacher conference, you can see that, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk to you about your child's behavior because I don't know how you're going to react. And I see the teacher's affect. And we told her, oh, yeah, we know these things. We know these things go on. We're dealing with it at home. Here's all the, and we walk through, here's the things that we're
yeah,
doing. And the look of relief on that teacher's face was, first of all, she's like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. I'm not telling you something like you're going to get upset with me.
right. Like, no, we
But
know all about this.
yes, yeah. But she really, we said, these are what the things that we're doing. Can we talk about what we can do to work together here at school? And that teacher, I mean, we had so much growth in second grade because this teacher really got it. She supported her and she accommodated some of the things that we just weren't going to work through quickly.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing. It was even before we had a 504.
And that's so encouraging. And I know teachers they have so many kids in their classrooms. Like I have so much empathy for I would not be a great teacher. Like I'm in broadcasting and I'm behind a microphone, right? And so I mean just some of these teachers really go above and beyond and
Hmm.
they're amazing. And I love that is what really helped kind of turn things around for you is taking that one special teacher that got it.
Yeah, and I will say that, and that's an example of that working together. We were all
Yeah.
working together to try to do the same things across both home and school to help lift her up and help her make progress, knowing that she wasn't by the end of second grade, she wasn't going to meet the behavioral expectations of that second grade classroom,
Yeah.
and that's just accepting some of that and being okay with it, and knowing that our job is actually to get her to adulthood with the skills she needs to be an
Mhm.
independent adult. Not my job is not to make her be the perfect child.
In second grade, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they
And
all learn so different.
exactly.
Yeah. So, looking at your ideas of how could this be better? I know you mentioned like the collaboration is really important, and we talked about empathy. Um, just through your lens as a mom, what would you love to see happen?
I would love to see, that collaboration, the empathy. The other thing is that truly evidence based intervention. When we talk about what's truly evidence based, it's actually implementing what's in the literature the way it's written, and using data based decision making. As a professional, and I am a data nerd, I'm a behavior analyst by training. So
Hmm.
I like to take all kinds of data on behavior and
Somebody's
using
got to do it, right?
that's right. That's
I
right.
love that you love it. That's awesome.
And so having that data to help inform our interventions rather than just saying, like, we're going to do this thing because it's in the literature, it's using that
Yeah.
data to say what is working. Am I taking too big of a step? Am I moving too slowly? Could we move faster? And so I think for me, in the perfect world is that there would be the time and resources that we could actually do this for all kids because we really see that, best predictors of success are social effectiveness and
Mhm.
problem solving, not
Yeah.
being the smartest kid. And
Mhm.
so if we could just help all kids to do this a little bit better, that would be great. And then I guess the last thing is really, and this is in the MTSS, so multi-tiered systems of support and PBS positive behavior support literature, but really looking at climate and how do kids interact with each other. For
Mm.
kids with neurodevelopmental profiles, it can be a very alienating experience because maybe you are impulsive and you bite your tongue a lot, or maybe you do have emotion regulation difficulty, and you know what, you lose your temper. And maybe, and I just think about my own kids, and they're like, oh my gosh, my all my peers are correcting my behavior, and it just makes me so frustrated because I
Yeah.
wish they'd leave me alone. I'll figure it out. And so sometimes it's like having a culture where there's acceptance can be
Mm.
also kids feel safe in working through these behaviors, not excusing misbehavior or infringing on the rights of others, but being able to come and say, like, I'm working on this, I'm getting better,
Mhm.
and having fewer of those social consequences of being a kid who's working on these things and has to work harder on it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. And I just think of all the phones and all of the social media stuff that these kids are just consuming all the time, and they're not behaviors that are helpful. Yeah.
Mm.
Lots of work to be done for sure. But Katrina, I really appreciate you being on the show again and just diving into the IEP and the 30
504.
plan. 504, not the 501c3. That's the only thing that's going in my head. The 504 plan, and really explaining that. I know it's out there and available, but even me, like, looking at it, I'm like, I still don't understand the difference. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to do that, because a lot of us are just, it's so busy, it's chaos, and who do I call first? So call the school first.
Yep, call
Um,
the school, and if you don't get what you need with the school, find an educational advocate. And then usually I say the lawyer is your last resort
last,
because it's
yeah,
gonna be a lot more expensive, and tends
right,
to be seen as more confrontational, but there is help out there and supports to
yeah,
help you navigate the system.
yeah. Well, where can people find you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me and my clinic is at www.beyondtheindividual.com.
Wonderful. There's so much information there, and I appreciate what you're doing. And I love that you're a mom and you're right in the trenches too. So you completely understand
Oh, yeah,
all sides of this. So
absolutely. Well,
wonderful.
thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show, Katrina. Well, thanks again for listening to Quick Wins for ADHD Moms. If you'd like more information, find some free resources, connect with other people, you can find all of that on our website, theadhdmom.com. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you next time.